Hey guys, thanks for tuning in with today's video. It's Ryan with DP Marketing.Services. Hope you are doing well, and hopefully my voice is nice and baritone right now because I am sipping on some coffee. So I'm still getting into it today, but thanks for tuning in. Hey, coming at your video, it's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, but it's something that a client of ours is going through right now. So it's been fun for us to do something like this. And the idea is branding. So that's kind of the core idea. So there's a lot of different perception of branding, what branding is, what it isn't. In just a really quick background, not that it matters, I studied marketing when I was working in my undergrad. And then when I went on later to get my MBA, marketing was, it wasn't the primary focus, but it was kind of like one of these supporting things that was in there. Marketing, advertising, branding, those are all things that were kind of discussed at an academic level. And so there's all the theories and all that stuff. I kind of personally, I think I reduce branding now to what people think or feel about your business instantaneously, like an irrational emotional response trigger. So if, for instance, if I said to you, think of a fast food hamburger joint, whatever popped in your mind is the result of branding. If you think good things about that, or if you think bad things about that, it's a response of branding. And if you think historically, branding actually went back to like people having cattle. So this is like 16, 17, 1800s, and people have to brand their cattle so that they knew the quality of the cow and who owned said cow, so that there was a sense of protect the customer, let the customer know that there's a sense of quality involved. Of course, they still brand cattle, but that was kind of the origin of what companies started doing to identify emotionally and irrationally to people what it is that they stand for and how it is that they operate. And so branding done well gives a lot of value if you have a great brand. So I think of companies like Apple or like Tesla. Maybe you even think of another high-end product like a Maserati or Lamborghini. That brand gives you a sense of what the company's about quickly, right? You don't have to research it, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to whatever. You just know, oh, when I think of that thing, I think of a good thing. And when I think of a BMW, I think of, oh man, that leather is so great, or whatever, right? Whatever it is that comes top of mind, that's the result of branding if it's a strong brand. If it's a toxic brand, it happens in reverse. Instead of people having positive sentiment about you, the sentiment is negative. And just as powerful as positive emotions are, I would probably argue that a negative sentiment is more powerful than a positive one. So a lot of times we have shops who they'll struggle with hey, what's the brand, and getting in front of people. And really what they're doing is they're kind of throwing a name and a logo out. And especially when they're younger, like when they're less than 5 years old, one of the struggles is that people, by and large, don't care your business name and they don't care your logo. Those things can be supporting elements of a brand image or a brand persona, but they themselves mean nothing to the average customer because they don't know who you are. What does mean something, though, is the experience they have when they interact with your company. If you come out, you help them, you solve their problem at a high level, you provide value, and you talk about the value providing for them. Heck, maybe you offer to walk their dog before you leave their house. Whatever it is, it creates a positive, lasting impact. Over time, those things become synonymous with your brand. On the other hand, if you're known as someone who does cheap work, you always bait and switch to customers, you always have to go back for callbacks, whatever, those things then become associated with your brand. What's interesting for us is that we have a client who, they're a larger company, they're almost 100 years old, which that in itself is interesting and amazing because it's so rare in the industry to find long-lasting companies like that. Their brand in their market is strong. And what they're wanting to do is to rebrand to include plumbing, HVAC, electrical services. But they also want to spin off and to do home remodeling, kitchens and baths. And so this is the thing. You have this strong brand association with plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. And then you want to spit off into do this home remodeling, kitchens and baths sort of umbrella. Now, the company's first response, and this is fresh, right? So we'll actually see what the company goes through. But originally they're saying, hey, we want to say that this is kind of a separate entity name. So if company name is Company A, I'm just going to say that to protect the company and play here. What they were going to do is say, hey, let's create a different entity and call it Company B. The problem with the consumer is there is no correlation to know that the brand experience they had at Company A belongs to or will be provided by Company B, because they're completely unrelated products, right? They're completely unrelated services in the mind of the consumer. And in my opinion, that negates the power of a strong brand. That having a strong brand lets you have an unfair advantage over your competition. So Apple, to me, is a great example of this. When Apple, go back to 2007 when they announced an iPhone, everyone went nuts over it. Nuts and nuts and nuts. And then Apple came out later and they said, hey, we're going to make an iPad. And everyone went nuts and nuts and nuts. And then they came out later and said, hey, we're going to make a watch. And everyone went nuts and nuts and nuts. Apple could come out tomorrow and say they're making a fridge. And what most people do, because of the power of the brand, they'll have a mental image of how cool, how sexy, how sleek, how overpriced that fridge may be. And then they'll still want one. Without seeing it, without knowing what makes it different or better or unique, the power of Apple's brand would make their refrigerator just as strong as any other product in their mix. Now, I say that to go, I'd be shocked if Apple ever does create a refrigerator line. But if you're watching this, guys at Apple, throw me a bone. But the point would be the power of the brand gives them an unfair advantage when they want to go into a different market. If they want to go to the appliance market versus the electronics market, it gives them an unfair advantage. It also works in reverse. If you have toxicity associated with your brand, anything that your brand touches will have that same toxicity. So at some point, it might make sense to rebrand or reclarify your brand to communicate something has changed. So you'd want to rebrand if it's a toxic brand. If you want to reposition to get away from that negative stigma, you'd want to rebrand if you're wanting to communicate a strategic mood internally to your company. Maybe you're making a seismic shift and you need to make sure everyone on your team is understanding this shift is so big, we're rebranding to make sure we're driving the point home. Maybe you're rebranding to align all of your resources. So maybe you have separate companies. Maybe you're plumbing and you do a fire mold damage restoration service. Maybe you want to rebrand so that you can leverage both of those businesses' assets and strengths together. Those are great reasons to rebrand. But if you don't have a brand association, if people don't know who you are, if they don't have an emotional response when they mention you by name, there's rebranding is just going to set you back. So I don't spend a lot of time on this point. We do see clients a lot try to think about, hey, I don't think our name communicates what we do, and maybe they'll change their name every 2 years. In that case, the rebrand is really more about like ADD, right? It's just more about can't commit to something and stick with it, because in a couple years, you will not get the momentum of a brand that Apple has, that Lamborghini has. Those things take decades to build and to grow and to refine. Doing a 2-year run, it's not even enough to make a dent. So all that to say, this is a little bit outside of our wheelhouse. We don't consider ourselves like brand specialists. We're not necessarily brand managers even. If you came to us looking for brand personas, we would probably refer you to someone else, because that's not our strength. It's just from our experience, obviously we deal with a lot of brands. You deal with a lot of brands. I was fortunate to work in ad agencies and study things at an academic level that involve a lot of big brands. That we just wanted to say, this is something a lot of guys struggle with and have an opportunity to grow with, and thought this video may be helpful. But a little bit outside the wheelhouse for this one, but I hope it was helpful. I would love to know what you think. I know it's a little bit longer than normal, but leave a comment below. As always, guys, follow us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. I'd love to see other things. We look at your comments to see other video ideas. So if you have questions, thoughts, concerns, whatever, please leave comments. Let us know what other topics you'd like to see, because we do pay attention for these upcoming videos. So I hope you're well, and we'll talk next time. See ya.